takes a certain kind of person to blaze a new trail. Anybody can go along with the crowd. Anybody can listen to the drumbeat of the majority, fall in line, become a part of the status quo existence, make no difference now or later. But if you're a trailblazer, that kind of thought turns you off. You're interested in making a difference, which begins with thinking differently and leads to decisions and acting differently from those around you. I just finished reading a fascinating book by Martin Dugard, who has written what he calls The Explorers. It's a book not that long, but packed with stories of adventure, remarkable adventures, the kind of trailblazing adventures you only imagine, of people who went deep into jungles and were there sometime for years. Others who took on the wild seas and were in 100 to 120-foot waves. Some who went to the depth of the sea. Others who went to the heights of the Himalayas. Some who walked across continents. Some who faced savages. And on the stories go, and you find yourself trying to imagine what they thought as they conquered one of the poles, north or south, or how they stayed in the canoe for weeks at a time, or how they faced insuperable odds without losing heart. They're trailblazers. At a particular part of the book, Dugard stops and says there are 7 qualities every explorer has. And that caught my eye. I marked it in the book and immediately memorized the 7. I'm determined through the balance of this year to work on 1 a month because I want to be like that. Not literally an explorer, but an explorer in heart. I want to be a person of vast adventures, not fearing the risk, thinking outside the box, determined to make a difference. Here are the 7. It all begins with curiosity. No explorer ever set out without first being curious. And then there's hope. Hope builds up behind curiosity and leads you with a fresh momentum into what may be your pursuit at that time. Then comes passion, always passion. The excitement, the enthusiasm that stays at it. As Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote on one occasion, it's doubtful anything great was ever accomplished without enthusiasm. Passion. And then courage, of course. Passion will run its course, but you will find yourself up against the odds, and you'll need the courage to stand fast or to press on. To go on beyond the disease that tries to conquer you or the fever from which you suffer. That determination that is always a part of it. And then there's independence. You discover with explorers there is that independent spirit, a willingness to think in such a way that no one else has thought like that. That mountain may be enormously high, above the proper oxygen level, but I can scale it. I can do that. And then there's self-discipline. Otherwise, it's just a nice dream, a good idea, maybe impressive to others, but you need the self-discipline to stay at it. Longer I live, one of my favorite words continues to be discipline. I know of no one I respect who isn't disciplined. And some of them disciplined in such a way that you feel almost like a sloth around them. They care little about the time. They worry little about what others may say or think. That's self-discipline. And finally, perseverance. Going on. One of the real tests among explorers is after the exploration is finished. You reach your destination. And then what? Well, it takes perseverance to hang in there, to find a new trail, or to seek the benefits of where you have been these last number of months or years. I've never studied a better model of a trailblazer than Jesus Christ. Think of it. In 33 years, he accomplished the mission. Never lost sight of it. Really didn't engage in it directly until about the last three and a half years of his life. And then brought along with him those who would carry on once he's out of the picture, hoping to build into them this trailblazing mentality. How different he was when he preached. What an unusual lifestyle, leaving the comforts of Nazareth where everyone knows him and mother is still alive and siblings are around, and he strikes out on his own. Do you hear them? Curiosity, hope, passion, and on through the process. So when he taught, you are not surprised that he broke a mold. Understand this, the people he taught in this Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, were people who all their lives had heard the rabbis teach what they had been taught and what those mentors had been taught in years earlier, and they had all fallen in the same sing-song, the same easy way through, the same self-serving plan, the same focus on hypocrisy and nothing about self-denial. Along comes Jesus, who begins his sermon with, "You're blessed. If you do this, if you do that, if you think like this, if you're willing to go there, you're blessed. Blessed are you, blessed are you, blessed are you." 1, 2, 3, 4. Time and again he says that. So we learn we're blessed. And lest you think it's all automatic when you get to these 13th and 14th verses of chapter 5, as the sermon has just gotten underway, he says, "You're salt and you're light." You don't shake the salt, you are the salt. And when you're involved in the world around you, you are the salt shaker. You give taste to the bland. You give preservation to that which is compromised by wrong. And you're light. Surrounded by darkness, you're the torch. Remember when I was a kid and we were in Carlsbad Caverns, farthest I'd ever been away from home, and we're in there, and my mom and dad are there, and sister, and I think our older brother is there, and we go down deep into this chasm, and then they turn out all the lights, and my first thought is, I hope my mother gets lost down in here somewhere. But I was young and stupid, and thankfully, she didn't get lost. She probably was thinking the same thing about me, come to think of it. I don't know. But anyway, in the darkness, the ranger says, "Now I want all of you to see the power of light." And he lit a match. Suddenly, one match, and the cave. You could see the corners, stalactites, stalagmites. I don't know which one is which, but they were both there. And you hear the rippling water. You see chasms down below. And one match. That's you. That's me. When we're out among the world system. if we're trailblazers. If we follow his instructions, we learn that salt and light is the way to be. We want to carry that out. We're not afraid of that. Oh, others mock it. Others think that's stupid, silly. What's wrong with you? That's par for the course. What do you care? If trailblazers listened to the majority, they'd never get in the boat. They'd never get up on a mountain. And then Jesus says something in chapter 6, verse 8. I want you to look at it. I think it's the key to understanding the sermon. Do not be like them. Who's them? Pharisees and scribes, the officials who promoted the sing-song religion. Fall in line, do what we say, follow us. This is the way you live your life, which led to a bland and deceitful lifestyle full of hypocrisy. Do not be like them. So, he takes on them without hesitation. This is where I think their hatred for him began. As the fringes were surrounded with, no doubt, Pharisees and scribes, listening to this young itinerant preacher from Nazareth, teaching these people as he sat among them. Jesus talked about murder. Scribes and Pharisees said, don't murder. And they stopped there. They left it at that. You could hate somebody all you wanted. You didn't have any problem, at least according to them. You could refuse to forgive and carry revenge and grudges the rest of your life. In fact, many of them encouraged that, not Jesus. So when he talked about murder, he said, let me go further, because I don't want you to be like them. Watch out for what grows in your heart. So forgive people. Get rid of the grudge. Some of you would discover that your life is transformed virtually overnight if you just got rid of the thoughts of revenge. Some of you live your life carrying a grudge. And I'm sorry. You're missing so much. Jesus never carried a grudge. So the last day he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. As his hands and feet are nailed to the cross. Murder starts in the heart. So you got to watch that. And when it does begin to emerge, this hatred, you got to forgive. He carries that through. Now, you get down to verse 27, you get in the nuts and bolts of life. That's where we are today, where he talks about marital fidelity, and then when you get over to verse 33, verbal integrity. Those two subjects he took on full force, without hesitation. Look at his pattern. I want you to mark it if you haven't already. Verse 27. You have heard, that's what the Pharisees taught them all their lives. That's what the rabbis had said, because they learned from the Pharisees. Verse 28, but I say. So now he's a trailblazer. Now he's breaking the mold. What you have heard did not go far enough. So I'm going to tell you more about this matter of adultery. And he sure does. Look at verse 31. It was said, and he addresses the subject of divorce. Verse 32, but I say. So he talks about the way they've been taught, which didn't go far enough, and now he says there's more you need to know. And so he goes there, verse 32. 33, again, you have heard, and 33, but or 33 says that, and then 34, but I say to you. Get the pattern? You have heard, but I say. You have heard, I say. It has been said, but I say. So when he adds the but I say part, he is now breaking the mold. And men and women, listen to me this morning. You must pay close attention to what Jesus taught, or you'll fall in line with the general population. You'll start thinking like they think. You'll start allowing yourself certain liberties like they do. You'll start fearing what they may say if you're not like them. You got to get past all of that. I think one of the reasons Jesus waited till he was 30, aside from God's perfect will for him, is that he was now mature enough to take whatever was thrown at him. About the time you get to age 30 and beyond, you ought to be able to live your life where you're like flint. It just flashes off of you. Beware when all people say good things about you. Now, Jesus takes it on in verse 27. Let's do our best with the time we have with marital fidelity, and along with that, the subject of divorce, and then verbal integrity, the whole issue of honesty and oaths. You've heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. Every adult in this room knows what that means. Jesus goes further. But I say to you, long before something happens in the bed, something has begun to happen in your head. And the next verse describes that. I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. For her, adultery with her in his heart. So, you got to come to terms with your eyes. Your eyes feed your mind, which builds imagination, especially in sexual, sensual areas, and you're off and running. As lust runs its course, and you're only a matter of time before you're in bed with another partner. Look at the next verse. Your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. Better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than your whole body be thrown into a hellish existence. Look at verse 30. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off, throw it away. Now, hold on. Some read this and they took it literally. So some men had themselves castrated. One man I read castrated himself. That must have been a full afternoon, huh? I mean, that is not what Jesus is saying. When you read, think. He's being ruthless with lust. And the only way to be ruthless is to use language that is extreme. That gets your attention. The plucking out of the eye is his way of saying, stop staring at another woman. You will not lust if you do not stare. It's like Job says in 31:1, I made a covenant with my eyes, I will not stare at a virgin. I like the old King James, I will not ogle a maid. Every man in this room knows exactly what that means. Every one of us. You look, and in the process of staring, you undress her. In the process of undressing her, you imagine yourself with her. And this is what he's getting at here. Let's not kid ourselves. And we all know that the man's source of temptation, at least the initial source, is the eye. For the woman, it's touch. By the way, what's said about the man is equally true of the woman. Women can lust just like men, and they do. Now keep your hands where they belong. Keep them off of the other person. Watch out about putting your hands all over someone else. I don't care if you are Italian. Just put your hands in your pocket. Don't touch her. Don't touch him. Some people just crave a hug. And there are times I want to say, actually, really, no. I don't want to hug you. But then they're all over you. As if that's going to help. Really, that's pretty needy. You don't have to do that. You don't know what happens in me when you hug me, nor I you. You say, well, gosh, Chuck, you're getting kind of ruthless. What else is plucking out your eye or cutting off your hand? You know what? I've never been with another woman intimately because I've never put my hands on another woman where I shouldn't. It works. It works. Every time it works. Jesus is so wise. Now, you got to understand, there are people in our day who are of the Victorian mentality that sex is nasty, it's shameful, it's degrading, it's distasteful. It's all those things outside of marriage. But inside of marriage, it's none of those things. Who created it? God himself made the man and made the woman. And he gave us a drive for each other. And after the marriage vows were taken and marriage has begun, there is a wonderful outlet for the stimulation of sexual desire and the fulfillment of it, not just for the bearing of children. That's why we have the Song of Solomon in the Bible. It's a great story of romance. And how about Proverbs 5? Listen, drink water from your own cistern, fresh water from your own well. What's that mean? Enjoy your own partner in life, your married partner. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets? What does that mean? That means you're intimate with someone who's not your married partner. It's very clear. Let them be yours alone, not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice in the wife of your youth, as a loving hind and a graceful doe. Let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. And on it goes. That's pretty intimate writing. Of course, because it's beautiful. Unless you find your interest on the internet. And that changes everything. You're not putting your hands where they belong. So stop going there. Nothing good happens in a sex site on the internet. And there are more of those websites than any other category on the internet. You'll never be in problems with it if you don't go there. You will be as soon as you do. Then there's a hedonistic mentality, which was true then and true now. Sex, hey, it's a free-for-all. No holds barred. We're sexual beings. Don't hold back. Participate, enjoy it. Do whatever you wish, whenever you wish, however you wish to do it, with whomever. If it feels good, do it. And I will add to that, since I deal with those who fall into that trap, that it leads to personal pain and boredom and shame and guilt and disease and thoughts of suicide and sometimes acts of suicide. It isn't fun. It's an addiction. Marital intimacy is not an addiction. It's fun. It's delightful. It's delectable. Filled with curiosity and joy, discovery, pleasure, shared with no one else throughout life. How good is that? That's what Jesus is talking about. He gets to the subject of divorce, and I don't have time to track all of the possibilities of this happened or that happened in your life or how did it. All I can do is tell you what he said in this passage, and there are other passages I'll give you in a minute. You can study on your own, but look at what he says here. It was said, verse 31, whoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce. That's what the rabbis taught. Now, to send your wife away, send her away. What were the reasons? Well, you're not going to believe how loose and liberal they were. Maybe you will. A man could get a divorce if she spoiled his food by adding too much salt or burnt his toast. Some of you had grounds this morning at breakfast. Just kidding. Number 2, if she went before the public with her head uncovered, divorce. Just write her up. She's gone. If she talked with another man, not her husband, or spoke disrespectfully to or of her husband's parents, divorce. Get rid of her. Here's one that made me raise my eyebrow. If she became plain looking and he found another woman more beautiful than his wife. You will always find women more beautiful than your partner. So you can always look forward to some other woman or some other man if you go by that. Talk about trivial pursuits. If you're a trailblazer, you're different. You refuse to let anything trivial be the basis of breaking the relationship. So Jesus gets down to brass tacks when he addresses it here, and he deals with one of the reasons there can be a divorce. Please observe, it is not a command, it is a concession. Please observe, it is not a command, it is a reluctant concession. What does he say? But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. That's got rabbit trails we could get on and be on for the next week. Let me just say simply that he's addressing the subject of divorce, which is introduced in the scriptures in Deuteronomy 24. Read the first 4 verses of Deuteronomy 24. That's where Moses, through God's leading, conceded because of the hardness of the people's hearts to allow a divorce. But it wasn't as God originally planned it. God originally planned that there would be one man, one woman forever. If a partner was unfaithful, the other partner ideally will forgive, find a way to deal with it, and go on. If it's impossible because that adultery continues, and becomes unbearably persistent, then the partner is free to divorce. This is a divine concession. This is not divine command. I always hesitate to use a specific example. I don't want to identify anyone, but another place, another time, someone you don't even know. I know of a couple where the man at a hotel fell and had a one-night quick sex experience with another woman, not his wife. His wife found out about it. She threw him out. Didn't talk about it. Didn't deal with it. Didn't ask what part she might have in it. Didn't address anything as related to where he was coming from. It was over, done with. You won't ever see the children. You won't ever have anything to do with this. That's too harsh. I know you're tempted to think like that because you're angry and you're confused and you feel betrayed, and you have been. But a marriage that hangs in there is able to work through stuff like that. Unless the partner is habitually unfaithful. That's another subject. I want to give you some passages of Scripture for you to study on your own, okay? You got your pen ready? These are the passages I would study if I were going to bring a series on marriage, divorce, and remarriage. Genesis 2, 18 to 25. That's called a passage of primary reference. It's the first time marriage is mentioned, and God sets the stage for it. Genesis 2, 18 to 25. Next, Deuteronomy 24, 1 to 4. That's when divorce comes in the picture. Malachi 2:16, the prophet writes clearly as God leads him, I hate divorce. Malachi 2:16. And you may too, but be a victim of it. I understand that. Remember, Jesus is the one who stood alongside the woman taken in adultery and defended her. Not her adultery, but the whole setup was wrong. This makes an interesting message. Someday we may do that out of John 8. But a man of enormous compassion and understanding. Then you've got Matthew 5, 27 to 32, where we are. Matthew 19, 3 to 9. Be sure you read that with this passage. 19, 3 to 9. 1 Corinthians 7, 1 to 16. Ephesians 5, 22 to 33. 1 Peter 3, 1 to 7. Something is wrong when people know reasons for divorce better than they know how to cultivate a good marriage. Something is out of whack when you care more about protecting your rights and property when you get married than you do about giving yourself to another person. Become a good student of marriage or don't marry. Just don't marry. Understand what you're getting into and what is involved in it. There are always two sides. Always two sides. Probably a good time for me to tell you the hardest work of my life is cultivating and sustaining a healthy and wholesome marriage. And I have a great wife. But it's hard work. It's harder than rearing children. It's harder than leading a church. It's harder than dealing with difficult people. Marriage is every day a constant check on selfishness. Constantly having to deal with the fact that you want this, but the other wants that, and how you give and take in that. How you learn to listen better than you talk. How you learn to forgive because you've been forgiven, and on and on and on. Marriage is a horrendous responsibility. I've talked many a couple out of it who've come to me early on. And I ask them a few leading questions, and they're not ready to answer them. And I'll say, till you're ready to go there. I know a couple that married in less than a year. They were in a terrible auto accident. She was paralyzed from the neck down. True story. He's at the hospital. He happened not to have been hurt. She was thrown out, broke that vertebra in the neck, and terrible. His doctor said to him, look, take a little advice. I'll cover for you. You walk out that door. And don't come back. And my friend looked at him and said, I got the wrong doctor. Many a person would say, well, of course. What are you going to get out of a marriage like this? By the way, they went on to have 3 children, wonderfully well adapted to each other. She lives in a wheelchair. Marvelous Christian people, where he realized marriage includes for better or for worse. Will you remember that? Would you be man or woman enough to say, I'm the worst? It would have been awfully hard for Cynthia to live with me. She hadn't been that tough to live with. I'm just so grateful she didn't walk out. You know, I'm a tough guy to live with. I'm hard on myself, and I tend, therefore, to be hard on others. Got to learn to live as a couple with that. I mean, we married when we were 8 and 10. Tiny kids. Believe me, she was 18, I was 20. I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. I mean, I probably shouldn't have put it like that, but that's the way I feel. And I got to tell you, we have grown up together. We have learned together. We've adapted together. We've gone to hell and back together. We've gone through the misery with kids. We've gone heartbreak with with individuals. I just won't even get into it. But I'm telling you, we're still together. And that shouldn't surprise anybody. Because that's what God designed. So, will you please mark it down that if you're going to marry, be ready for the hardest work of your life. And I might add, to keep it all fair, the most rewarding. When I lay down by her at night, it's just about the greatest moment of my day to have her right there. And I'm so grateful that I was raised right by a couple who stuck it out and had us kids and lived it, modeled it. I want that for you. I really want that for you. And I know your situation is enormously challenging. Well, cry me a river. Everybody's is enormously challenging. Everybody. Some are unbearable, and then you've got to deal with it, and that calls for extreme measures, and you got to take that on. I'm not dealing with that here, but I'm just dealing with what Jesus taught. Now, finally, the matter of oaths. What is an oath? An oath is a promise. A promise. He said again, you've heard that ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. What's a vow? Promise. There are oaths that we take that are absolutely appropriate. Stand in the courtroom. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God. I stand as a possible candidate for President of the United States, and I put my hand on the Bible when I'm voted in, and I take what's called the oath of office, that I will defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America and the citizens who live here in this nation. That's my oath. That's my promise. You don't have to turn around and say, I really, really mean this. Or, I promise this on a stack of Bibles. That's what he's getting at here. You don't have to do that. Or I've heard people say, on my mother's grave. Really? You have to say that? Or, Jesus in my heart. Whatever that means. It means what I say you can't really rely on, so understand Jesus in my heart. Well, he needs to be in control of you, not just in your heart. So that's what he's getting at. That's why he says at the end of this passage, let your yes be yes or your no, no. Isn't that refreshing when you're around a person and you ask them a question, they say no. No explanation? You don't have to explain it. Are they willing to do it? Yes. You say, sure, we all do that. Well, let me ask you a few questions. You signed up for the long haul in that loan. You said you'd pay it back every month. Do you? Or are you late? You said you'd be on time. You gave your word that you would be faithful to your marriage regardless when you took your vow at the altar. Have you been? Something simple like you said you would be there at 2 o'clock. Were you? Or did you keep them waiting? Not realizing that one of the greatest acts of selfishness is procrastination. Show up or don't say 2 o'clock. And if you're going to be late, call. It's a matter of keeping your word. This is never more important than between a husband and wife. That's why I think the subject follow one another. I've seen more lying going on in a marriage than any other place in my entire experience. Couples lie to each other. Chances are good you've lied to your partner. And that creates a gap. Starts when you're courting and it goes on into marriage. Stop the lying. Look at what he says. God puts it beautifully. Nor shall you make an oath by your head for your cannot make one hair white or black. Let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of evil. Truth is the most powerful thing on the planet. When we live in it, we have no skeletons, we have no fears, we have nothing to be found out. We sleep well, we die with a clear conscience. No elaborate verbiage needed, just tell the truth. Now, how do we fulfill these teachings of Jesus? Very simple. Here we go. First, when you marry for all your life or don't marry. Marry for all your life or don't marry. Let's just start today. We won't try to worry over the mess you've made of your life in the past. That's for you to work out with the Lord. From this moment on, if you're going to marry for the rest of your life. And be sure you understand you're not marrying a perfect person. Neither is the one they're marrying qualified for perfection. Marry for all your life. Permanence is a big part of a partnership. Number two, when you speak, say what you mean and mean what you say. When you speak, when you talk, say what you mean, then mean what you say. Not long ago, Cynthia and I had the distinct privilege of being in a home where there is the presence of cancer that's killing the wife. It's now inoperable, and to be there is heartbreaking because we loved them both. And we knew them when she was healthy, and now we know them as she is dying. The disease has stolen her beauty. The reason I speak of beauty is he showed me before we left through their home and in their hallway are lovely pictures of their wedding. She's gorgeous. And they move on in life, and a young woman begins to bear their children. Beautiful woman, aging but beautiful, beautiful in every way. And then the disease hits. And she's wrinkled and curled up and can hardly look up. He showed us to the door after we had communion and prayer together, and it was a great moment. And I thanked him for being a model. He said, no. Let me explain something. Way back when, saw that first picture, married. Just before we married, she said to me, do you promise that no matter what, you'll be true to me? And if I ever come to the place where I need you to survive, that you'll be there. I said, yes. All I'm doing now is keeping my promise. That's about it, isn't it? That's about it. My heart breaks when I think of another situation where a woman who was in our church, she's now dead. When she got cancer, that day her husband left. Nobody ever saw him since. What's that about? How heartbreaking. She was never bitter. Remained generous to the end of her life. Torn by cancer. So folks, be a trailblazer, okay? We got enough of the politically correct. We got enough of the people listening to the media. Enough of the folks going along with the crowd. Listen for the heavenly drumbeat. It comes right out of the scriptures. Let that be your guide. You'll never go wrong if you follow the teachings of the scriptures. You will often go wrong if you follow the advice of the crowd. Even friends will tell you wrong. Stay with the book. Lord, we walk through this rather quickly, but not casually. We care very much about pleasing you. And we know you will love us even when we don't, but how great it is to realize we took you at your word and you helped us through. Thank you for a wife that has stayed with me. Thank you for the joy of a marriage that's had many challenges. Thank you for the rewards that come in having her by my side now that we've reached this age. Thank you for the privilege of being able to teach these things without a fear of someone shaking a skeleton from a closet that'll ruin my reputation. Thank you for your help in keeping me pure. Now, Lord, I realize that we're just sinners, and the enemy will come after us with both guns blazing because we've heard this. The test will begin. Help us to be true to your truth, faithful to your commands, and vulnerable with one another. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Everybody said, Amen.
The preceding message, Whatever Happened to Fidelity and Honesty, was copyrighted in 2015 and 2021, and the sound recording was copyrighted in 2021 by Charles R. Swindoll, Inc. All rights are reserved worldwide. Duplication of copyrighted material for commercial use is strictly prohibited.